At my brother's promotion party, he raised a toast. My sister got fired again. Maybe stick to stripping. Our dad chuckled. At least she's good at that. The crowd's laughter froze when the CEO walked in, eyes locked on me. Ma'am, I need you to pack your personal items now. The security guard's voice was gentle but firm as he stood beside my desk. 20 coworkers pretended to focus on their computers while I fumbled for my coffee mug with shaking hands. This wasn't a performance review or a warning meeting. This was the end. The cardboard box appeared out of nowhere. Karen from HR materialized beside me with that practiced sympathy face she probably learned in corporate training. Take your time, she said, but her foot was already tapping. The clock on my computer screen read 10:23 a.m. I'd been fired exactly 37 minutes into my Tuesday. My fingers moved automatically. Coffee mug first. The one that said world's okayest employee, a gift from my college roommate. Then the small succulent I'd nursed back to health over 6 months. Its tiny leaves finally bright green after arriving half dead from the office supply catalog. My business cards went in next, still warm from the printer. Willow Hayes, Senior Systems Analyst. I'd been so proud of that title. Before we continue, I want to thank you for joining me in sharing stories about women who refuse to stay silent. If you believe that competence should matter more than family favoritism, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps us reach more women who need to hear this. Now let's see how this unfolds. The photo frame was the hardest part. Mom and me at my college graduation, both of us grinning like we'd conquered the world. She died 2 years later, never getting to see me land this job, never knowing how Harrison himself had shaken my hand on my first day and said, "We need more people like you around here." Miss Hayes. The security guard's voice pulled me back. I realized I'd been staring at the photo for too long. Everyone was watching now, not even pretending to work anymore. Sarah from accounting had her hand over her mouth. Tom from IT kept glancing between me and his monitor like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. I couldn't blame them. I'd been the reliable one. The person who stayed late to fix everyone's problems, who brought birthday cakes for coworkers I barely knew, who volunteered for the projects nobody wanted. I'd never been written up, never missed a deadline, never given them a reason to doubt me. But that was the story of my life, wasn't it? Being perfect had never been enough. Growing up, I was the daughter who followed every rule. Color-coded homework planners in elementary school. Perfect attendance awards displayed on the refrigerator. National Honor Society certificate framed in the hallway. While Finn was getting suspended for starting food fights, I was tutoring struggling classmates for free. The first crack in my golden daughter facade came during senior year. Finn had cheated on his SATs. Not well, mind you, just enough to scrape into community college. Instead of consequences, Dad bought him a brand new truck. He needs encouragement, Dad explained when I asked why my perfect scores only earned me a pat on the head. I'd earned a full scholarship to State University, graduated summa cum laude with a degree in computer science, and landed 3 job offers before graduation. Dad's response? That's nice, sweetheart. Your brother's thinking about maybe transferring to a 4-year school next semester. Maybe thinking about next semester. Those became the words that defined Finn's existence while I was actually achieving things. But Harrison Technology was different. Here results mattered more than family politics. When I solved the server crash that would have cost us our biggest client, Harrison himself came to thank me. When I designed the security protocol that saved the company from a data breach, I got a raise and a promotion. For 3 years I'd felt valued. I'd worked 60-hour weeks gladly because every project was a chance to prove myself. Every solved problem was evidence that I belonged here. I'd found my place in the world and it felt incredible. I never talked about my successes at family dinners. Not because I was modest, but because I'd learned that my achievements made everyone uncomfortable. When I mentioned my promotion to senior analyst, Finn had rolled his eyes and said, "Must be nice having a boss who likes you." Dad had chuckled and changed the subject to Finn's new girlfriend. They had a way of making my victories feel small. When I bought my first car with my own money, Finn joked that I was showing off. When I moved into my own apartment, Dad wondered aloud why I was in such a hurry to leave the family. Every milestone became a reason for me to feel guilty instead of proud. The irony wasn't lost on me now, sitting in my car in the parking garage with a box of personal items in my lap. The job that had finally made me feel worthy was gone, and I hadn't even been given a reason why. Just a form letter about restructuring, and a security escort to make sure I didn't steal any staplers on my way out. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad. "How's work going, sweetheart?" I stared at it for a long time before typing back, "I got fired." His response came back in 30 seconds. A thumbs up emoji. Not "what happened?" or "are you okay?" Just a thumbs up like I told him about the weather. Then Finn's text arrived. No words, just a gif of a woman dancing around a pole with laughing crying face emojis. He'd managed to turn my professional devastation into a joke before I'd even processed what happened to me. I sat in that parking garage for an hour watching people stream in and out of the building where I used to belong. The rational part of my brain knew I needed to update my resume, start making calls, begin the job search process. But a deeper part of me, the part that had been collecting small hurts and dismissals for 28 years, was finally waking up. This wasn't just about losing a job. This was about a lifetime of being the golden daughter who was never quite golden enough. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't planning to smile and try harder. I was planning to find out exactly why I'd been thrown away. 2 weeks of unemployment had turned my apartment into a fortress of self-pity. Empty coffee cups lined my kitchen counter. My laptop sat unopened on the dining table, and I'd worn the same pajama pants for 3 days straight. The routine was simple. Wake up, check job boards, feel overwhelmed, order takeout, repeat. Then the invitation slid under my door like a knife. Heavy cardstock paper with gold-trimmed edges. The kind Dad always insisted on for important family events. My name was written in elegant calligraphy across the envelope. Miss Willow Hayes. Not beloved daughter, or even just Willow. Miss Hayes, like I was a distant acquaintance being invited out of obligation. I tore it open with my thumbnail, already knowing what I'd find inside. Join us in celebrating Finn's promotion to executive director at Morrison & Associates. The date was set for this Saturday. The location was the country club where Dad held all his business events. Dress code, formal. No mention of my recent firing. No acknowledgement that 2 weeks ago, I'd lost everything while apparently Finn was climbing corporate ladders. Just a cheerful invitation to celebrate the golden boy's latest achievement. I threw the invitation on my coffee table and stared at it for 20 minutes. Executive Director. Finn couldn't spell definitely without autocorrect, and somehow he'd landed a position that would have taken me years to reach. The same Finn who'd cheated his way through college was now making 6 figures while I was rationing ramen noodles. My phone rang at exactly 6:30 p.m. Unknown number, but something made me answer. "Willow, this is Harrison." His voice sounded different, strained, almost whispered. "We need to talk. In person. Tonight." "Mr. Harrison, I don't think that's..." "Please. There's something you need to know about why you were fired. Something about your brother." The coffee shop he chose was across town, the kind of place where nobody from our industry would accidentally show up. Harrison was already there when I arrived, hunched over a corner table with his back to the wall. He looked older than I remembered, with dark circles under his eyes and a nervous energy that made my stomach clench. "Thank you for coming," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "I wasn't sure you would." "What's this about, Mr. Harrison? If you're feeling guilty about firing me..." "I didn't fire you." The words came out flat, definitive. "I was forced to let you go." I felt my face flush. "Forced by who?" He pulled out his phone and slid it across the table. On the screen was a photo, grainy but clear enough. A younger Harrison at what looked like a college party, arm around a girl who couldn't have been more than 17. Both of them holding red cups, both clearly intoxicated. "This was 25 years ago," he said quietly. "A party at my fraternity. That girl was my girlfriend's younger sister visiting for the weekend. Nothing happened, we were just talking, just posing for pictures. But without context." I stared at the photo, understanding creeping over me slowly. "Someone threatened you with this." "Your brother." Harrison's voice was barely audible. "He showed up at my office 3 weeks ago with this photo and a fabricated report claiming I'd been inappropriate with female employees. Said he'd go to the media, the board, my wife if I didn't clean house." The coffee shop suddenly felt too hot. "Clean house? Fire you? Specifically you?" Harrison met my eyes. "He said you were getting too comfortable in your position, that you might start expecting promotions you hadn't earned. He wanted you gone before you could become a threat to his own career prospects." My hands were shaking now. His career prospects. Finn doesn't even work at your company. He's been networking. Apparently he's friends with some of our board members' sons. Golf buddies, I think. He mentioned wanting to apply for positions in our industry, said having a sister in senior management might create conflicts of interest. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Finn hadn't just destroyed my career, he'd planned it, calculated it, used fabricated evidence to force my boss into firing me, all so he could pursue opportunities in my field without having to compete with his more qualified sister. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Harrison leaned forward. As I found out the photo was doctored. The girl in the picture, I tracked her down. She's 38 now, married with 3 kids. She confirmed the party was a college event, that she was 21 at the time. Your brother had digitally altered her appearance to make her look younger. You have proof. Enough to bury him. Harrison pulled the phone back. The question is, what do you want to do about it? I thought about the invitation sitting on my coffee table. About Finn's smug face when he'd sent me that stripper gif. About Dad's thumbs up emoji when I told him I was fired. About 28 years of being treated like my achievements didn't matter. I want my job back, I said. Done. You can start Monday if you want. Harrison paused. But I get the feeling you want something more than just your job back. He was right. Something was crystallizing in my mind. Not revenge exactly, but justice. Finn thought he was untouchable because he'd always been Dad's favorite, because he'd learned to charm his way out of consequences. He'd counted on me being too nice, too passive, too much of a good girl to fight back. The promotion party, I said. Will you be there? Harrison's eyebrows raised. Your father invited the entire Morrison and Associates board. It's supposed to be a networking event disguised as a family celebration. Perfect. A room full of the people Finn wanted to impress, the connections he was counting on to build his career. The same career he'd destroyed mine to protect. I stood up from the table. Mr. Harrison, I'll see you Saturday night. Willow, what are you planning? I smiled for the first time in 2 weeks. I'm planning to show my family exactly who they've been underestimating. When I got home, I picked up the invitation and found my phone. The RSVP line went straight to Dad's assistant. This is Willow Hayes, I said. I'll be attending Finn's promotion party. Please mark me down as a +1. Oh, wonderful. Your father will be so pleased. Any dietary restrictions? Just one, I said, staring at my reflection in the dark window. I don't swallow lies anymore. Dad's text came an hour later. So glad you're coming, sweetheart. Wear something modest this time. Lots of important people will be there. I typed back, don't worry, Dad. I'll wear exactly what the occasion calls for. For the first time since that security guard had appeared at my desk, I felt like myself again. Monday morning arrived with the strangest feeling. Walking back into Harrison Technology through the same glass doors that had ejected me 3 weeks earlier. But this time I wasn't Willow Hayes, senior systems analyst. I was a ghost. Harrison had set up my new workspace in the basement archives, a cramped room filled with outdated servers and boxes of old financial records. Officially, you're a contract consultant reviewing our data security protocols, he explained, handing me a keycard with no photo. Unofficially, you have access to everything. The setup was perfect. Nobody questioned a contractor poking around old files. Nobody looked twice at the woman in jeans and sneakers carrying boxes of documents to her car. I was invisible again, but this time by choice. I started with Morrison and Associates Public Filings, the company where Finn had mysteriously landed his executive director position. The numbers didn't add up immediately, but after 3 days of cross-referencing expense reports with client billings, patterns emerged. Finn's first red flag was subtle. A series of consulting payments to a company called Strategic Solutions LLC that didn't seem to exist anywhere except on paper. I traced the business registration to a P.O. box in Delaware, paid for with a credit card that led back to one of Dad's subsidiary accounts. Strategic Solutions had billed Morrison and Associates for $47,000 in market research over the past 6 months. The exact period when Finn had been networking his way into their good graces. My hands were steady as I photographed every document. This wasn't just nepotism, this was fraud. The coffee shop across from Morrison and Associates became my second office. I'd sit by the window with my laptop watching employees come and go, learning their routines. Jennifer from accounting always grabbed lunch at 12:30. Marcus from IT took smoke breaks every hour on the dot. And Finn left for 2-hour client meetings every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Those weren't client meetings. I followed him once, feeling ridiculous and exhilarated at the same time. His client meeting was actually a golf lesson at the country club, paid for with a Morrison & Associates corporate card. The instructor confirmed it when I called, pretending to be from their billing department. "Oh yes, Mr. Hayes' standing appointment," she chirped. "Every Tuesday for the past 4 months. Such a dedicated student. Dedicated to embezzling, maybe. But the golf lessons were small change compared to what I found in the Vegas receipts. Finn had convinced Morrison & Associates to send him to 3 different industry conferences in Las Vegas over the past year. I called each conference organizer. 2 of the conferences didn't exist. The third had been canceled due to low registration, but somehow Finn had spent $8,000 of company money during a week when he was supposedly attending sessions that never happened. The hotel receipts told a different story. Room service charges for 2 people, spa treatments, dinner reservations at restaurants that cost more than most people's rent. Finn hadn't been networking. He'd been living it up on someone else's dime with what appeared to be a rotating cast of companions. Each piece of evidence felt like a small victory, but I needed more than financial irregularities. I needed to understand how deep this corruption went and who else was involved. That's when I met Margaret. She was cleaning Harrison's office one evening when I was pulling late-night archive duty. 60-something with shrewd eyes and the quiet confidence of someone who'd been ignored for so long that people forgot she had ears. "You're the girl who got fired," she said matter-of-factly, emptying the trash can. "I'm a contractor now," I replied carefully. Margaret snorted. "Honey, I've been cleaning offices for 30 years. I know the difference between hired and rehired." She paused, studying my face. "Question is, what are you really doing down here in the basement?" Something about her directness made me decide to trust her. "I'm trying to prove that my brother destroyed my career to cover up his own crimes. The pretty boy who was here a few weeks ago? Throwing around threats and acting like he owned the place." My pulse quickened. "You saw him. Saw him, heard him, cleaned up after his little tantrum when Mr. Harrison wouldn't play ball fast enough." Margaret set down her supplies and leaned against the desk. "He left some interesting papers in the conference room trash. Figured they might be important someday." She reached into her cleaning cart and pulled out a manila folder, slightly wrinkled but intact. Inside were printed emails between Finn and someone named D. Morrison, presumably Dad's contact at Morrison & Associates. The emails were damning. Finn hadn't just blackmailed Harrison. He'd been coordinating with Dad to systematically eliminate me as competition in the industry. They'd identified 3 other companies where I might potentially find work and had begun spreading rumors about my instability and family loyalty issues. "Your brother's not very smart," Margaret observed as I stared at the papers. "Left these sitting right on top like he wanted someone to find them." "Why are you helping me?" I asked. Margaret's expression hardened. "Because 30 years ago I was the smartest accountant in this city. But I was also a single mother who couldn't afford the right clothes or the right connections. Men like your brother, and your father, they've been keeping women like us down for decades. Time someone fought back. He became my most valuable ally." Margaret had access to every office, every computer, every conversation that people thought was private. She brought me security footage of Finn's meetings with Morrison executives, recordings of Dad bragging about handling the Willow situation, and financial documents that painted a clear picture of systematic corruption. But the most valuable thing Margaret gave me was perspective. "You're not just fighting for your job," she said one evening as we organized evidence in the basement. "You're fighting for every woman who's been told she's too emotional, too ambitious, too threatening to the boys' club. Don't just beat them, honey. Destroy the system that created them." The promotion party was now 5 days away. I had 3 boxes of evidence, a dozen witnesses, and a plan that would expose not just Finn's corruption, but the entire network that had protected him. I also had something else. The quiet satisfaction of knowing that while they thought I was broken, I'd been building their destruction from the ground up. Saturday night arrived with unseasonable warmth. The kind of evening that made the country club's outdoor terrace feel like a stage set for wealthy people's theater. I pulled into the circular driveway at exactly 7:20 p.m., 10 minutes early, just as I'd planned. The valet who took my keys did a double take when he recognized me. Word traveled fast in our small social circle. I was the Hayes daughter who'd been fired, the family disappointment who somehow still had the audacity to show up looking composed in a navy blue dress that cost more than most people's car payments. I'd chosen the outfit carefully. Professional enough to command respect, expensive enough to signal I wasn't broken, and conservative enough that Dad couldn't find anything to criticize. Every detail was calculated, from my understated jewelry to the leather portfolio I carried like armor. The country club's main ballroom buzzed with conversation and clinking glasses. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over round tables draped in white linen, each centerpiece a small mountain of roses that probably cost more than I'd spent on groceries in a month. The bar was doing steady business, and I could already spot familiar faces from Morrison and Associates mingling with Dad's usual business associates. Finn held court near the windows, his face flushed with alcohol and attention. Even from across the room I could see he was already 3 drinks past professional. His laugh was too loud, his gestures too broad, his confidence inflated by the admiration of men who saw dollar signs when they looked at him. "Didn't think you'd show, sweetheart." Dad appeared beside me with his trademark smirk, the same expression he'd worn when I was 12 and had accidentally broken his golf trophy. No pole on this stage. The men around him chuckled on cue, corporate executives who'd built careers on knowing when to laugh at the boss's jokes. I recognized most of them. Board members from various companies, partners from law firms, the kind of men who made decisions about other people's futures over 18-hole golf games. "Hello, Dad," I said, accepting the champagne flute a server offered. "Lovely party. Well, it's not every day your son becomes an executive director." His chest puffed with pride that had never been directed at me. Finn's really found his calling. Natural leadership, you know. I sipped my champagne and nodded, scanning the room for Harrison. He hadn't arrived yet, but I could see several people from my former company scattered throughout the crowd. Some avoided my gaze entirely, probably uncomfortable about witnessing my professional execution. Others glanced at me with expressions I couldn't quite read: pity, curiosity, or maybe something closer to respect. "You were always too smart to fit in here," a voice said behind me. I turned to find Linda Morrison, one of the senior partners' wives. She was in her 60s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with the kind of confidence that came from decades of watching men underestimate women. "Mrs. Morrison," I said, surprised by her directness. "Oh, call me Linda. I've been watching you tonight, dear. You carry yourself differently than the last time I saw you." She studied my face with the intensity of someone who'd learned to read people for survival. Like someone who knows something the rest of us don't. Before I could respond, the sound of feedback from the microphone cut through the conversation. Finn had claimed the small stage at the front of the room, swaying slightly as he adjusted the microphone stand. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his words slightly slurred but still commanding attention. "Thank you all for celebrating with me tonight. This promotion means everything to me, proof that hard work and dedication really do pay off." The irony wasn't lost on me. I watched Dad beam with pride, watched the Morrison and Associates executives nod approvingly, watched a room full of successful people celebrate a fraud. "To family," Finn continued, raising his champagne glass high. His eyes found mine across the room and his smile turned cruel. "And to my sister, fired again. Maybe she should stick to stripping instead of pretending to be corporate material." The laughter that followed felt like acid in my veins. Not polite chuckles this time, but genuine amusement from people who thought my professional destruction was entertainment. Dad clinked his glass against someone else's, his grin wide enough to show his molars. I didn't move. Didn't flinch. Didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. Instead, I looked toward the ballroom entrance and waited. The doors opened at exactly 8:15 p.m. Harrison walked in alone and the shift in the room was immediate. Conversations quieted. Heads turned. The man commanded respect in a way that had nothing to do with inherited wealth or family connections. He'd built his reputation through decades of ethical business practices and genuine leadership. He didn't stop to greet anyone. Didn't pause to shake hands or exchange pleasantries. He walked directly toward the stage with the focused intensity of a man on a mission, carrying a manila folder that seemed to weigh more than paper should. Finn was still at the microphone, basking in the applause from his toast, when Harrison stepped onto the small platform beside him. "Before you all toast Finn," Harrison said, his voice cutting through the remaining chatter without needing amplification, "there's something you should know." The room went completely silent. I could hear my own heartbeat, could sense the collective intake of breath from 200 guests who suddenly realized they were about to witness something unprecedented. Harrison opened the folder in his hands, and I saw Finn's face drain of color as he recognized some of the documents inside. "You blackmailed me, Finn," Harrison continued, his voice steady and clear. "You forged documents, manipulated evidence, and destroyed your sister's career to protect your own fraudulent activities." The silence stretched like a held breath. I watched Dad's champagne glass freeze halfway to his lips, watched the Morrison and Associates executives exchange panicked glances, watched Finn's mouth open and close without producing sound. Then Harrison turned toward me, his eyes finding mine across the frozen crowd. "Willow," he said, extending the folder in my direction, "would you like to do the honors?" My hands were perfectly steady as I walked toward the stage. The folder felt weightless in my hands as I climbed the 3 steps to the stage. 200 pairs of eyes tracked my movement, but I could only focus on Finn's face. The way his confident smirk was melting into something closer to panic. I opened the folder deliberately, letting the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. The first document I pulled out was a photocopy of a Morrison and Associates expense report, Finn's signature bold across the bottom, authorizing $8,000 for a Vegas conference that never existed. "This is interesting," I said, my voice carrying clearly without the microphone. "A business trip to attend the Southwest Technology Summit last March. Except when I called the organizers, they told me the event was canceled due to lack of interest." I held up the hotel receipt attached to the expense report. But somehow Finn still managed to spend company money on a week-long stay at the Bellagio, including room service for 2 and spa treatments that cost more than most people's monthly salary. The first murmur rippled through the crowd. I saw several Morrison and Associates executives exchanging glances, their faces tight with the realization that their golden boy might not be so golden after all. "Wait," Finn said, reaching for the microphone. There's an explanation for." "There's more," I interrupted, pulling out the next document. Strategic Solutions LLC. A consulting company that billed Morrison and Associates $47,000 for market research over the past 6 months. I looked directly at Dad, whose champagne glass had gone completely still in his hand. "The company is registered to a Delaware P.O. box, paid for with a credit card linked to one of Elijah Hayes' subsidiary accounts. Strategic Solutions doesn't have employees, doesn't have an office, and doesn't have any actual work product to show for nearly $50,000 in billing." The silence was deafening now. I could see people pulling out their phones, probably texting their lawyers or their wives or their business partners. This wasn't just a family drama anymore. This was a corporate scandal unfolding in real time. Dad finally found his voice. "Willow, I don't know what kind of lies you've—" "I'm not finished," I said, and something in my tone made him close his mouth. "The fabricated evidence against Harrison Technologies CEO. The doctored photograph designed to look like inappropriate conduct with a minor. The systematic campaign to destroy my reputation at other companies in the industry." I pulled out a printed email chain and held it up for the room to see. "These are communications between Finn Hayes and David Morrison, planning my professional destruction to eliminate me as competition. They identified 3 companies where I might find employment and began spreading rumors about my mental stability and family loyalty. David Morrison, a distinguished man in his 60s who sat at one of the front tables, had gone completely pale. His wife was staring at him with an expression that suggested this conversation would continue at home. "You want to know why I was really fired?" I continued, making eye contact with people throughout the room. "Because I was getting too good at my job. Because I might expect promotions I hadn't earned. Because having a competent woman in senior management might create conflicts of interest when Finn decided to pursue opportunities in my field." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. I watched Linda Morrison lean over to whisper something urgent in her husband's ear, watched several other wives do the same thing at their respective tables. Finn made one last desperate grab for control. "This is ridiculous," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "She's clearly having some kind of breakdown. Everyone knows she's been unstable since she got fired." "Finn." Harrison's voice cut through his protests like a blade. "You're terminated. Effective immediately." The words hung in the air for a moment before their full impact hit. I reached into the folder one more time and pulled out an official termination letter, printed on Morrison and Associates letterhead. "Signed with your own signature stamp," I said, handing him the document. "The same stamp you used to authorize fraudulent expense reports. Consider it poetic justice." Finn's face turned the exact color of the red wine that someone had spilled on the white tablecloth nearby. His hands shook as he took the letter, and I watched 28 years of arrogance crumble in real time. But I wasn't done. "There's one more vote that was taken today," Harrison announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the ballroom. "The Morrison and Associates Board of Directors held an emergency meeting this afternoon. Elijah Hayes has been removed from his position as chairman, effective immediately." Dad's champagne glass finally slipped from his fingers, shattering on the marble floor with a sound like a gunshot. "The motion passed by a single vote," Harrison continued. "The deciding vote was cast by the newest member of the board, someone who was unanimously approved this morning based on her extensive experience in corporate systems analysis and her demonstrated commitment to ethical business practices." Every eye in the room turned to me. I felt a strange calm settle over my shoulders, like putting on a coat that finally fit properly. "You cast the deciding vote?" Dad's voice was barely above a whisper. I looked at him, really looked at him, for what felt like the first time in years. The man who had dismissed my achievements, laughed at my humiliation, and actively participated in destroying my career. "You taught me this game, Dad," I said quietly. "You just never expected me to play it better than you." Security appeared at the edge of the crowd, not dramatically, but with the quiet efficiency of professionals who had been briefed on the situation. 2 men in dark suits waiting for their cue. Finn was still staring at his termination letter when they approached. "This isn't over," he said, but his voice had lost all its earlier confidence. "You can't just—" "Actually we can," Harrison said. "And we have. Security will escort you both out." As they were led away, Finn protesting loudly about betrayal and lawsuits, Dad maintaining his dignity even as his world collapsed, something extraordinary happened. Someone started clapping. It was Linda Morrison, her gloved hands coming together in slow, deliberate applause. Then her husband joined her, despite everything. Then the woman at the next table. Then more. Within 30 seconds half the room was applauding. Not the polite golf clap of social obligation, but genuine appreciation for what they'd just witnessed. I raised my champagne glass toward the crowd, feeling lighter than I had in months. "To family," I said, echoing Finn's earlier toast, and finally being good at something. The laughter that followed wasn't cruel this time. It was cathartic, relieved, almost celebratory. I had become the story they thought they were writing, but with an ending none of them had seen coming. The applause was still ringing in my ears when I finally made it home that night, my heels clicking against the marble lobby of my apartment building with a different rhythm than usual. Confidence maybe. Or just the sound of someone who no longer had to apologize for taking up space. I poured myself a glass of wine, the expensive bottle I'd been saving for some theoretical future celebration, and sat on my couch still wearing my navy dress, still processing what had just happened. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from people who'd been at the party, but I ignored them all. This moment belonged to me alone. Morning came with unusual clarity. No grogginess, no existential dread, no checking my phone for job listings. For the first time in months, I woke up knowing exactly where I was supposed to be. Harrison had texted at 6 a.m., board meeting at 8. "Big changes coming. Hope you're ready." I was more than ready. The Harrison Technology lobby looked the same as always. Polished marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, the subtle hum of success in the air. But something felt different when I walked through those glass doors. The security guard who had escorted me out weeks ago nodded respectfully. The receptionist who had avoided eye contact during my termination looked up with genuine warmth. "Good morning, Ms. Hayes," she said, and I realized I'd never actually learned her name during my previous 3 years here. "Good morning, Rachel," I replied, reading her nameplate. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" Her smile widened. The most beautiful I've seen in months. The executive floor buzzed with unusual energy. Staff members I'd worked with before offered quiet congratulations as I passed. Some seemed genuinely happy for me. Others looked nervous, probably wondering if my return meant their own positions were in jeopardy. Harrison was waiting in the boardroom with several other executives I recognized from the previous night's festivities. The atmosphere was businesslike but warm, with an undercurrent of excitement that felt infectious. "Willow," Harrison said, standing as I entered. "I'd like you to meet your new team." The introductions blurred together. Vice presidents of various departments, senior managers, people whose names I'd seen on company directories but had never worked with directly. What struck me wasn't their credentials but their expressions. These weren't people going through the motions of corporate politeness. They looked genuinely interested in what I might bring to the table. "Before we dive into logistics," Harrison said once everyone was seated, "I want to address the elephant in the room. What happened last night wasn't just about exposing corruption at Morrison and Associates. It was about acknowledging that I, had failed to protect one of our most valuable employees." He looked directly at me. "The board unanimously voted to offer you the position of Chief Operating Officer, effective immediately. But more than that, we want to rebuild this company's culture to make sure what happened to you never happens to anyone else." The title hit me like a physical force. Chief Operating Officer. Not just getting my old job back, but a position 3 levels above where I'd started. The kind of role I'd dreamed about but never dared to expect. "What exactly does that mean?" I asked. "It means you're in charge of operations across all departments," said Janet Morrison, Linda Morrison's daughter-in-law, I realized, and apparently a senior executive in her own right. "It means you have the authority to implement the changes you think this company needs. It means we're not just giving you a fancy title, we're giving you the power to use it." An hour later, I stood in front of what was now my office, staring at the brass nameplate that hadn't been there the day before. Sue Willow Hayes. The letters seemed to shimmer under the fluorescent lights. The office itself was impressive. Corner location, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a conference table that could seat 12 people. But what struck me most was the desk. Not the expensive mahogany or the leather chair, but the fact that it was completely empty. A blank slate waiting for me to fill it with my own vision. I called my first all-hands meeting for 2 p.m. The main conference room was packed beyond capacity, with people standing along the walls and others joining virtually from satellite offices. I could see curiosity in their faces, mixed with cautious optimism and in some cases barely concealed anxiety. "I know some of you are wondering what my appointment means for your jobs," I began, deciding to address the fear head-on. "Let me be clear. We're cleaning house, but we're not burning it down. Everyone in this room gets a chance to prove who they really are." The relief was immediate and visible. Shoulders relaxed. People leaned forward instead of back. The energy in the room shifted from defensive to engaged. "What I learned over the past few weeks," I continued, "is that corruption thrives in silence. It grows in the spaces between what we say publicly and what we tolerate privately. We're going to change that." I outlined my vision. Transparent promotion processes, anonymous reporting systems for ethical concerns, regular salary audits to ensure pay equity, and mandatory bias training for all management positions. "This isn't about punishment," I said. "It's about building something better." The questions that followed were thoughtful, challenging, and honest. These people weren't just looking for job security, they wanted to be part of something meaningful. My phone rang 3 times that afternoon. Dad's number appeared twice. I sent both calls to voicemail without listening to the messages, then blocked his number entirely. Finn's email arrived around 4 p.m., a rambling message that started as an apology and devolved into self-justification and accusations. I deleted it without finishing it and set up a filter to automatically delete any future messages from his address. Some ghosts aren't meant to haunt you. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is let them fade into irrelevance. I stayed late on my first day not because I had to but because I wanted to. The building grew quiet around me as people headed home to their families, but I felt energized rather than tired. On my desk I placed a single photograph. Mom and me at my college graduation, both of us grinning like we'd conquered the world. She'd been gone for 6 years now, but I could still hear her voice clearly. "Don't let them convince you that silence is grace, Willow," she'd said during one of our last conversations, when I'd been complaining about a professor who kept dismissing my contributions in class. Sometimes the most graceful thing you can do is refuse to be quiet. I finally understood what she meant. If this story of corporate justice had you cheering Willow on, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Willow calmly presented each piece of evidence while Finn's confidence crumbled completely. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more empowering stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.